Bizarre Brain Comics. Hello and welcome to Bizarre Brain Comics. I'm Gary, your host. This is where I like to take a look at some older comics, talk about the characters and the creators, and then examine the stories and the art. This time, I'm going to go back to 1983 with this issue of DC Comics Superboy number 45, 1983. Let's see what the big book of knowledge has to say about Superboy. And this is The New Adventures of Superboy, number 45, 1983, written by Paul Kupperberg, drawn by Alex Saviuk, and inked by Kurt Shaffenberger. And the title of this story is Sunburst, Public Enemy Number 1. Okay, and Superboy is the name of several fictional characters in DC Comics. There have been several titles of these characters primarily appearing in adventure comics. He first appeared in More Fun Comics number 101 from 1944-45. And this started the adventures of Superboy. And so you see, that wasn't very long after Superman himself made his appearance. And it did a bit of retconning, because previously Superman had first appeared as an adult. And now classic Action Comics number 1 from 1938. And his appearance was part of his how Clark Kent got into the Daily Planet. Well, at that time the Daily Star, but they had a retcon. It was just, I think it was kind of a fluke. It was just expanding because remember, their biggest competition, which actually outsold them, was the Shazam, Captain Marvel titles, and they had developed a whole family of characters, and Superman was competing, and whether intentionally or not, had to go up with head to head against Captain Marvel Jr. So it was just originally like a one-off story, but it was probably intended to see how it would do. And then he appeared in other books. This started the adventures of Superman as a boy. And he got his own title, Superboy number 1, in 1949. His base of operations was in the fictional town of Smallville. And this is where we get so much of that backstory, which was eventually became the basis of the very popular Smallville TV series. I liked that a lot. And that's where young Clark Kent grew up, and raised by Jonathan and Martha Kent. I'll hold off there for right now. Okay. So, let us step back a generation and visit the adventures of Superman when he was a boy in Superboy. Okay, here we go. You can see, get a better view of that cover. This is a cover illustration wonderfully drawn by Gil Kane. We'll talk more about Gil Kane another time. But this is very action-packed and dramatic and eye-catching on this cover illustration, and it is much more dynamic and dramatic than the interior story, but it has its moments as well. Okay, and Superboy was, or Clark Kent, of course, was raised by Jonathan and Martha Kent, and he wanted to use his, as a boy, he wanted to use his powers to help people. This is when he started, not just a little tot getting into trouble using his powers, but old enough to know right and wrong and stuff, and he wanted to use his powers to help people. See, in young Clark Kent, then about 12 or 13 or so, he donned the now iconic Superman costume to hide his identity and help people and defeat various supervillains, occurring a great deal of continuity later used in the Superman stories. Most notably, with like Lana Lang, his early friendship between Superman and Lex Luthor, then as boys, and Lex Luthor blaming Superboy for the loss of his hair. It was actually his own fault in that storyline, which also, of course, played into the Smallville TV series, how Clark and Lex were friends as well as enemies. Then with I always liked, well, I'll get to that. With Crisis on Infinite Earths and the John Byrne Superman reboot of the mid-'80s, Superboy was no longer canon, and young Kent's powers developed years later, which I liked better. And he used his powers to help people in secret for years, without a costume, until he revealed his presence, saving an aircraft with Lois Lane aboard. Then he dons the suit. That's like what we saw in the movie, and of course it's in the that was part of the inspiration or the premise of Smallville, because young Clark in his teens and early adulthood was traveling around the world and helping people with his powers in secret, and I like that aspect. That's one thing I like. Now don't get me wrong, I actually like Superboy. I like the Superboy stories. I enjoy reading them quite a bit, but I always preferred the idea for Superman to have not appeared until he was an adult. And I like the idea of Clark going around helping people. He's learning how to use his powers, learning, in the learning phase, without the costume and without the public recognition. And I think that's the way it should be. But I'll be covering Superboy again. There were many iterations of Superboy, of course, and most notably through the 70s, he was constantly with the Legion of Superheroes in the 1,000 Years in the Future. And of course, that started back in the 50s, but it became constant. Then he was just a member of the Legion of Superheroes and less about Superboy. And then they kind of went back and rebooted him, because it was always, for a long time, they had Superboy in the 30s. Even when then for a long time in the 50s, and all that stuff. Then, of course, they rebooted him, and then after the crisis and after the death of Superman, they brought Superboy back. But this is one aspect of that I like for Superboy, to not be Clark Kent. And of course, in that iteration, he was a genetically engineered clone of Superman Lex Luthor. And there was another series, because in the late 80s and early 90s, there was, lasted for 4 seasons, the Superboy TV series. And they had a tie-in comic book, which I also liked, and was probably better written than most of the TV series. That first season, especially the first half of the season, it's a wonder it ever lasted to a second season. The actor wasn't great, and the stories were horribly written. That's when they started bringing in people from DC Comics to do the writing. People who actually knew how to deal with the character. And then it really picked up. And then after Gerard Christopher took over in the role and had the better writing, it was a much better series. That's in my opinion. Okay, now let's take a little look here. As I said, here, the artist, Alex Saviuk. This was still relatively early in his career. He did several things for DC, and he did some Superboy, but he is best known for his Marvel work, and especially he spent several years drawing Spider-Man in the comics, and then even more years doing the Spider-Man comic strip after Larry Lieber retired from that role. So, and he is a fine artist. I talked about him before, as well as Kurt Shaffenberger, who is the inker in this. Now, Kurt Shaffenberger, he goes back to the old days, Fawcett days. He did a lot of the Marvel family artwork, and then with DC, Lois Lane, and then Jimmy Olsen, and then he did a lot of Superboy. Did some other various Superman stuff, and it's actually kind of surprised when I looked at this, and it was Alex Saviuk doing the pencils, because I just associated through about this time period Kurt Shaffenberger with this title, and but he did the inks, so it still bears a strong Kurt Shaffenberger resemblance, which is some very nice clean line, but he has a kind of a natural cartoonish stylization in his work, and that carries through in covering up some of the more illustrative work by Saviuk. Okay, here is a splash page, Sunburst, Public Enemy #1, showing this unknown character here just zapping the crap out of Superboy. There we go. The Bijou at the theater in Smallville. Clark Kent is on a date with a young lady. I'll reveal her name, Lisa Davis. And they're watching the movie. This is the Japanese movie of the superhero character Sunburst, as he's fighting giant monsters. Kind of like Ultraman. Except he doesn't grow big like Ultraman. And they're talking and they're marveling at how he is. And they're at the end of the movie. And then they go, we switch scenes and to Japan. And there is Sunburst on the studio. You can see the miniature cityscape there, and a really nice image of Sunburst here. And then he actually takes off and flies away. What the heck? He's supposed to be all crappy special effects, and he zaps part of the city. And so there's something going on here. It says, "I swear by my ancestors and the souls of my beloved parents, you shall join them." So there's something going on here. And we actually never really find out in this issue. And back to Smallville. After the date, they go out to the soda shop. They're going to get something to eat and drink here. And they're talking. They're getting to know each other. And because this is their first date. And Lisa is remarking, says, "Oh, I'd say that in addition to doing fine in the ketchup department," because he said he was nervous about asking her for a date. He doesn't date much. This is their first date, and she's had kind of like him. And then here comes the bully, and he's real crude and rough, smacking Clark on the back. And they just, he and his date just intrude on theirs, mostly so he can try to make fun of Clark. Then Clark sees, his super senses alert him to some emergency. He says I must have eaten too much popcorn. He heads to the bathroom where he quickly changed to Superboy. He goes to Smallville Sentinel, the newspaper. Someone has broken in, and these people are breaking in. He catches one. The one tries to smack him on the head with a with a flashlight for all the good that does. Just a little flick. Then the owner and editor of the newspaper pop in. Says, no, don't. He's obviously very nervous, and he's intimidated by these guys. And once no charges pressed, said, "Oh, actually, I gave him permission. They're supposed to be here looking for something, and I forgot to give him the key," and all that other silly stuff. Well, Clark knows it's not true, but he takes off. Superman knows it's not true. He takes off. That's really nice right there. Some very good, you can see, panel-to-panel continuity, visual storytelling. And I think Kupperberg did a respectable job on telling the story, writing the story. But all this stuff is leading into something. It's a subplot to come to fruition later. So I won't carry on with that. Here's another subplot with business leaders wanting Jonathan to run for office. Another subplot we won't dwell on. Clark gets the newspaper in the morning just before breakfast and says in the paper, "Japanese film hero comes to life and turns to crime." He goes, "What the heck? This guy's fictitious, and here he is actually doing." So somebody's doing something, and he quickly switches to Superboy and flies off to Tokyo. Contacts the police. Realizes, now this is some of the silly stuff that they did, which pre-crisis Superboy and Superman had the capability of doing, and I don't like it. He goes to talk with Japanese police and realizes he doesn't speak Japanese. Using his super brain and supervision, he hunts down a Japanese English dictionary, reads it in a flash and memorizes it, and suddenly he understands Japanese. Well, it's not going to work very well that way, but I don't like that kind of stuff. But they do that all the time. There's some really nice artwork on this, because it's a quiet time. Sedate scenes with Superboy interacting with regular characters. When something's going on, says, we're glad to have you help, because we're not prepared to deal with superpowered enemies. Something's going on. He and Superboy races to the dock where Sunburst is attacking this giant ship, a really nicely drawn ship. Here at Sunburst, and all the police boats there are attacking him, and he attacks back, knocking everyone off the boat. But notice that he doesn't actually injure anyone. And then Superboy rushes in, and having a fight. And while he grabs him, he's temporarily blind because this character has all the powers of the fictitious Sunburst. And so bright, have a flash of light so bright it even momentarily blinds Superboy. And the guy throws the guy. And they just fight. But he starts getting the upper hand. Oh my gosh. And here, of course, while they're fighting, they're talking. Said, "I've more to my arsenal than mere sun power and flight. such as superhuman speed and agility, and incredible hardness of body and mighty strength. And most important, I have a sacred mission to perform. Yeah, we don't know what. And tosses Superboy where he is kind of stunned, and he's about to say, now he holds hostages. Said it threatens the entire city of Tokyo. This on this ship. Said his powers would cause all the fuel oil to explode, which would devastate a good part of the city. So decide, will you persist in this fruitless combat, or will I unleash heat of the sun upon the volatile contents of this oil tanker? Decide, Superboy. Dun dun dun! Continued next issue. I don't know remember what happens. It's been a long time since I've read that one. I have it someplace, or had it. I don't know if I still have it. And all the subplots that we saw come up in later issues. Then has a backup story of Dial H for Hero. We won't cover, but I do like that. Nice pencil drawing there. Because I plan on doing some Dial H for Hero another time. So here we are. At the end of this issue, with our on bated breath, waiting to see what's going to happen next time with Superboy fighting this Japanese Sunburst character. And I like this character. Dun dun dun, that's the end. So, thank you for joining me. Please like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. And remember, comics are art.